Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you along for this third episode in our fifth season of Wines We Drink. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Keith Herndon, a certified wine sommelier.
Thank you, Charlotte, and hello to all of our listeners. This podcast is our passion project, but it would be hard to muster the passion without the support of our loyal fans. Thank you so much for being with us today.
And you're so right about that. I mean, y'all are really why we keep showing up. Though I will say we have a lot of fun, just the two of us here. If you've missed our first two episodes this season, you can find them along with all of our other episodes from every other season on all of the major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We also have a full episode guide at wineswedrink.com, and I'm going to throw out that you especially want to check out our Instagram for this week's episode at The Wines We Drink.
I continue to be amazed at the staying power of our archives.
Yeah,
right? It is amazing. We call it our Summer Fun Project, but we had thousands of listeners between the seasons again. So, thank you again.
It really is, something that we enjoy over the summers, but the episodes are evergreen and you can enjoy them all year round. We're coming at you this week from Keith's Wine Kitchen, but our bottle this week will transport you to Italy via California's Napa Valley. We're featuring a wonderful bottle of Vermentino that is also a passion project of its maker, a Napa grape growing legend who has found a home for this varietal in his Rutherford Dust vineyard.
Yeah, it's very exciting to share today's bottle with our listeners because it's truly a unique wine. As we've established in our two previous episodes, the foundation for this summer's podcast comes from our book, Wine Conversations Exploring Meaning, Mystery, and Myth, which was published in January. The book is a compilation of expert interviews and includes my conversation with Mark Neal. For some of our listeners, Mark needs no introduction. He's an iconic Napa grape grower. He started all the way back in the 1960s when he worked with his father while still in elementary school, right? As he said in the book, quote, "I have turned a lot of dirt from Carneros to Calistoga and on every mountaintop here in Napa Valley," end quote.
How amazing is that? He indeed has really completely navigated top and bottom the Napa region. And I don't think it's a stretch at all to call him one of the fathers of California's organic farming movement.
Not at all. He was there at the very beginning of the organic movement, and now he's an advocate for regenerative organics, which goes beyond traditional organic methods to emphasize restoring soil health and enhancing biodiversity.
Mark's primary business is managing vineyards for others, actually. He also has a contract labor business that provides the workers for other growers and a large truck operation that carries the grapes and wine all over the valley. But today we're just going to focus on one element, which is his winemaking prowess.
Yes, his Neal family vineyards makes wine from two of his estate vineyards, one on Howell Mountain and the other on the valley floor known as Rutherford Dust. And that's where today's Vermentino grapes come from, as you mentioned. He doesn't make a lot of wine, only about 4,000 cases a year, but the wines he produces are a reflection of his commitment to organic agriculture and just overall production excellence. He wants to really showcase what organic farming can be, and he puts all of that into the bottles of wine he produces.
And that just makes, I feel like, today's selection that much more special. And I'm really ready to open it and begin. So can you share with us what we're enjoying today?
Yes, we're opening a 2022 bottle of the Vermentino. This varietal is a thin-skinned and late-ripening grape. It does great in warm, dry climates. Mark found that it was especially suited to what he described as the Rutherford Dust's Mediterranean climate. And the result is a wonderfully satisfying, light, dry white wine.
That sounds right up my alley. Let's open it up and pour us a couple of glasses.
Certainly. Glass number one here.
As you're pouring, I could see there's just a little color to it. It's a true straw yellow, I would say. It's very elegant looking in the glass.
I was already getting some of its lively aromatics, right, as I was pouring. Even before I lifted the glass to my nose, right? Yeah. It's really
It's really powerful. I mean, and not in a way that's too much. I'm going in for that first sniff here, and you're right. Wow.
So as you put your nose into the glass, what first comes to mind?
Fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit comes to mind. I mean, this wine really, it's already opening. And I'm getting apple notes in there, pear, some stone fruits, green stone fruits, I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely a stone fruit combination at work here, and I'm also picking up some notes of ripe melon.
Mm-hmm.
Honeydew is how I would describe that.
Yep,
Right?
we're sticking firmly with our green fruit in that, which is right. All right, let's take that first sip, dive into the palate a little bit. I think there's going to be a lot to explore here.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whoa.
Wow. The grapes that are in this bottle were harvested October the 18th, 2022. They were promptly fermented with very minimal intervention. The wine was aged for 5 months, and Mark is very specific here. 37% new French oak and 63% neutral French oak before it was bottled on April the 20th. So it has had some time to continue evolving in the bottle, and we've had this wine before, but what do you think about it now after revisiting it today?
Right, it feels brand new again somehow every time, and you really can taste that precision. Somehow it is such a unique wine, but it is so zesty and so dry. There's citrus, of course, so lemon and orange, but I think what shines through is that tinge of lemongrass. It gives it a bit of character like a Sauvignon Blanc would present, but I'm going to go back in for another taste. This is an exciting one.
I'm with you there. It does have some of those same attributes as a Sauvignon Blanc, and for me, this is such a great wine because of its elegant and juicy finish. I mean, Vermentino is not a well-known varietal, in the United States. It's definitely, known from being kind of an Italian varietal, but, you use the word elegant to describe its color in the glass, but I think that description applies all the way through to how it closes. Right?
You're absolutely right. And that lemon citrus sensation really stays with you to the end. You just said it was juicy, and that's a great word for it. And it also has a surprising smoky hint to it.
Well, that's interesting that you picked up on that, because I read a tasting note that described that as grilled Meyer lemon.
Ugh, how fitting. Perfect.
It's also important, I think, to talk about how this wine reflects its terroir, its place of origin. Mark talks glowingly about his Rutherford properties as simply beautiful, and he gives his father credit for selecting that land. Mm-hmm. It's been farmed organically since 1966. It received its certified status as certified organic in 1984. So this isn't someone who pays lip service to organic. He lives it, and he's been living it for a long time.
Mm-hmm, before it was cool to be organic even.
Right.
I mean, what do you think makes this particular vineyard so special?
Well, it's on the floor of the Napa Valley between the Mayacamas and the Vaca Mountains, and it's nutrient-rich, deep loamy soil. That makes it suitable for a lot of different varietals. Mm-hmm. They grow several red varietals there, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel, Petit Syrah. And again, as Mark describes it, the vineyard produces grapes that lead to very fruit-forward wines. I mean, we got that today here with this.
Absolutely.
You get that in his red varietals. It also translates to the fruit-forward white wines. He's been quite successful there with Sauvignon Blanc, which we already noted shared some of the similarities and attributes with this Vermentino.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So if you know a familiar, popular white wine here in the States, Sauvignon Blanc, you probably will really get a kick out of a Vermentino, especially this one. As we often point out on this show, a vineyard's location contributes to a wine's excellence tremendously, but it also really takes the skill of the winemaker to actually deliver on the promise of the terroir, to reflect it.
Yeah, we do talk a lot about that. I think the wines we drink that resonate with us the most are those that come from great wine growing locations. But they are brought to life by winemakers who appreciate the art in what they do.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'll add in here too that they also have to know what they like and be willing to stake their reputations on it, right? So in other words, these winemakers have to be willing to aim for that uniqueness.
Yeah, that certainly captures Mark Neal's spirit. I asked him during our book interview what he likes in wine. So here's an audio clip of his response.
I love a big mouthfeel. That's what I like to have that throughout all the wines I make for myself and the wines that I drink and taste. I like roundness. I like fruit. And I like knowing there's oak, but that's about it.
And here's a second clip from him where he underscores this point about uniqueness.
I like a wine that's, it's got, a lot of character to it, and knowing that it's not a recipe wine.
Right. How do you define a recipe wine?
Well, there's what it tastes like the same every year. Every vintage is that wine. You go back to that winery, and it's exactly the same year in, year out, and that's a recipe wine.
I especially appreciate his stance on what he calls recipe wines. He wants different vintages to stand on their own. He wants the terroir to shine through. He wants us to experience the essence of that varietal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of this suggests to me that Mark's wines are best enjoyed with a meal. So I'm ready to turn our attention to how we pair this Vermentino with food.
Well, listeners, you are in for a treat today. Those of you who were with us for the first episode this season will recall that we teased our plans to highlight the culinary skills of my co-host, and we're introducing her today as Chef Charlotte.
Oh, so right?
Fun. So this is the debut. So Chef Charlotte has prepared our pairing to complement this excellent bottle of Vermentino.
That's right. I am a kitchen hobbyist, I would say, as self-described. And so before we get to that main attraction, I'm always into a cheese pairing. So let's have a few sips paired with a cheese that plays to the ancestral heritage of the wine.
I love that approach. What cheese have you selected for us?
Given that Vermentino is a quintessential Italian varietal, it pairs nicely with Italian Pecorino Romano. It's a sheep's milk cheese that has saltiness that plays off of the wine's acidity.
Great. Let's have a few sips and bites.
So there's that slightly nutty undertone with this cheese that complements those stone fruit notes as well.
Yes, I love the cheese's texture with this wine. It's a hard cheese, but it breaks down quickly with this wine and evolves into a nice creamy mouthfeel. It's an excellent cheese to pair with a Vermentino.
Mm-hmm. We've said this in previous episodes, but a good tip for our listeners to consider those common geographic histories when pairing wine and cheese. So find a cheese that shares a common place of origin with the wine varietal, and that's a great place to start.
Yes, I mean, the Italian Pecorino cheese, the Italian Vermentino varietal. It's just a wonderful flavor combination, but I'm ready for that main attraction you mentioned.
Well, before I unveil our food pairing, you have to give our listeners a bit of background. So, after all, you were the one who issued this challenge.
Okay. I'm still finishing the cheese here, okay? Given Mark Neal's prominence, I had the opportunity to experience his wines in the past year at not one, but two wine dinners. The first was at the Chastain in Atlanta, where this Vermentino was paired with a delightful poached lobster with a miso aioli sauce, right? The second dinner was here in Athens, our little college town, which is home to an amazing restaurant, the 5 and 10. On this evening, the chef paired the Vermentino with an Italian-style seafood stew full of clams and shrimp and leeks, seasoned with oregano and bay leaf. I mean, both of these dishes worked so well with this wine. I mean, it was just an amazing experience, right? So I challenged you to come up with something comparable. If we're debuting Chef Charlotte, right? Let's go big and bold. So what did you come up with?
Well, to kick off our summer fun of food pairings, I am presenting a fun twist on a familiar summer favorite. At least it's a favorite of mine. Lobster rolls.
Oh, wow. You chose lobster. You're going up against the Chastain with this lobster dish. But I'm here for you, so let's give it a shot.
Okay, so now you can serve these warm or chilled, and depending on where you're from in New England, I'm sure that you have strong opinions about either. But I'm opting for chilled today with a very simple preparation. This is steamed lobster, melted butter, lemon juice on a toasted brioche bun, a little fresh lemon zest on top. Keeping it simple will allow for that richness of the lobster to really be emboldened by the citrus that we're getting from the lemon and the wine. Plus, it's a super easy dish for our listeners to recreate at home. It took no time. What do you think? Should we give it a try?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's take a bite.
Yeah. Oh, it even looks gorgeous.
That's why I mentioned Instagram earlier. If you want to see this lobster roll that we're having here today, we've posted a picture accompanying today's episode.
Oh, my. This lobster is succulent. The way you've prepared it, I know we're not supposed to be talking with our mouth full. At least that's what my mom taught me. But, the way you've prepared it allows the richness to just shine through. And I'm having a sip of this wine.
Right.
You get the citrus tanginess. It just plays off this tender texture. But it doesn't overpower the natural sweetness you want to experience from some lobster.
Right. I think that goes back to, simple pairings, right? We were talking about simple cheeses and just really allowing those ingredients to come together and complementing that precision and artistry that comes from that wine. So what do you say? Is the challenge met?
Oh, this is more than challenge met. Chef Charlotte has just elevated our show to new heights, okay?
Shucks.
A perfect pairing. Certainly a tasting experience worthy of this highly rated wine. Retails for about $50. Mm-hmm. The Vivino app considers it among the top 3% of wines in the world, and Wine Spectator gave it 90 points. So I'm just gonna sit here and enjoy this exquisite lobster and wine pairing, while we take a short break. Listeners, I can only wish you could be here with me to have some of this. You can see the pictures on Instagram, but it's not the same as eating this lobster and drinking it with this wine.
I know. The phone ate first, but we get to eat now. So thank you for your kind words. Listeners, you can't be here, but you can stick around for today's finish. That's the segment where we bring this show in for its landing. And in today's finish, we're going to talk more about pairing wine with food. So we'll be back in a moment. Hello again, everyone. We are back from our break, and we're now in the portion of the show that we call the finish. We want to bring the show home with some interesting nuggets that will keep us on your mind long after the show ends.
Charlotte, so today I want to keep our conversation going about pairing wine and food. I mean, your lobster dish was a spot-on pairing for our Vermentino today. But not every wine pairs with every type of food. There's some general principles that apply, and once we understand them, we are much more likely to enjoy the wine that we're drinking with our meal.
Absolutely. I certainly drew inspiration for my dish today from the meal that you described having at the Chastain with the poached lobster. And our book features your interview with the Michelin-starred sommelier who was there at the time and organized all of the pairings for that meal. He's Juan Fernando Cortez, and he talks extensively in the interview about his pairing philosophies.
Yes, so let's listen to a brief clip from that conversation where he talks about harmony and contrast.
I do like to find harmony in my wine pairings because you're either looking for harmony or contrast. When you have oysters with champagne, the champagne doesn't taste like oysters. So that's not harmony, that's contrast. But when you have like Dover Sol Meunier cooked with capers, with brown butter, then like a really good quality Chardonnay from Burgundy is going to harmonize really well with that. So I'm always looking for one or the other. If you can harmonize, then you go for the harmony. If you can't, then you go for the contrast and in a way that is also harmonious.
That's a great summary of two important concepts of wine and food pairings. He first mentions harmony, and to me that simply means successfully blending the flavors of the wine with the food so that they complement each other.
And on the other hand, when he's talking about contrast, he's intentionally pairing a wine and food that have opposite characteristics, like pairing a sweet Riesling and a spicy Thai dish. So ultimately, those contrasts create a balance of flavors. And another example was today's wine and cheese pairing. So we had the acidity of our Vermentino, and that cleanses the palate in a way that enhances the flavor of our salty Pecorino Romano cheese.
What I hope our listeners take away from this is that food and wine pairing can be fun. I mean, don't be afraid to experiment. You know, it won't take too many experiments to learn which pairings clash too much for you, right? You know, ultimately, it's about finding what you like. You know, everyone's palate is different.
Exactly. And being willing to take a chance on a wine varietal that you may not be familiar with. I mean, my wine journey, especially with this show, has opened me up to so many different wine types and styles. And it's been such a blast.
Right. As a reminder to everyone, you know, our episodes this season are based on the interviews and the wines related to our book. You know, we've heard from Mark Neal today. We've heard from one, Fernando Cortez. The book, Wine Conversations, Exploring Meaning, Mystery, and Myth, was just a really big project for us, right? And I want to do a big thanks to Mark Neal and to Juan Fernando Cortez for their contributions to the book. You can order it through Amazon or through our local distribution partner, Neighborhood Books. The links are at our website, wineswedrink.com.
Before we leave, can you give our listeners a sneak peek into next week's episode?
Oh, yeah. Our book includes an amazing conversation with a prominent viticulturist who's on faculty at Cornell University. We're heading to her part of the world. The great news is that it gets me to revisit our wine trip to the Finger Lakes that we took, you know, in upstate New York, and I'll get to share another wonderful Riesling from that part of the world.
I'm excited. So until next week, everyone, cheers.
Yes, cheers, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.